Have you ever stopped to think about who you were back in elementary school, and then who you are today? I mean, how did that incredible transformation even happen? Well, that's basically the story of developmental psychology. It's the journey of how we grow, how we think, and how we become, well, us. So let's explore that journey together.
We're going to break this down and focus on two really key chapters of this story. First, the foundational years of middle childhood, where all the building blocks are laid. And second, the complex and, let's be honest, often winding path of young adulthood. It's a journey of some really predictable growth, but also some surprising new twists.
All right, first up, let's dive into middle childhood. We're talking roughly the elementary school years. This is a time when physical growth is, remarkably steady and predictable. It's all about setting a solid foundation for the massive changes that are just around the corner.
And even this early on, you start to see these subtle but really important differences in body composition. On average, girls tend to develop a little more fatty tissue, while boys start building more muscle mass. These are just the normal, foundational changes that kind of set the stage for physical abilities later in life.
Do you ever feel like you're just constantly buying new clothes for a kid in elementary school? Well, this is why. They're in this phase of incredibly consistent growth, shooting up about 5 to 7 centimeters, that's a couple of inches, every single year. It's not a sudden dramatic growth spurt, it's more like a steady march upwards.
And right along with that height, you see a steady weight gain of about 2 to 3 kilograms, so maybe 4 to 7 pounds per year. Again, this isn't the crazy growth spurt you see in teenagers, right? It's this really predictable expansion as their muscles get stronger and their bones continue to develop and harden.
But hey, the changes aren't just on the outside. Nope. Inside the brain, something absolutely revolutionary is happening. This is the moment where the real building blocks of logical thought are being put into place.
Okay, the real action is happening right here in the prefrontal cortex. You can think of it like the brain is getting a major software and hardware upgrade. You've got processes like myelination, which is like insulating the brain's wiring so signals travel way faster. And at the same time, synaptic pruning is cleaning out unused connections, making the whole system more efficient. The result? A huge leap in attention, reasoning, and flexible thinking. And this new ability? It actually has a name, which was coined by the legendary psychologist Jean Piaget: concrete operations. It basically means a child can now think logically, but, and this is the key, their logic is grounded in the physical world, things they can see, touch, and move around. Abstract ideas are still kind of tricky, but they become masters of the here and now.
All right, let's put this to the test. Let's try one of their new skills. Take a look at this puzzle. If object A is longer than object B, and B is longer than C, what's the relationship between A and C? Now, a younger child might get totally stuck here, but a kid in this concrete operational stage can solve this right in their head.
So, did you get it? If you figured out that A is longer than C, congratulations. You've just used a cognitive superpower called transitivity. How cool is that? And that's not the only one they unlock. There's also seriation, the ability to order things logically, and reversibility, which is understanding that if you flatten a ball of clay, it's still the exact same amount of clay. The world is starting to make a whole lot more sense.
Okay, so that's the steady, predictable part of the journey. But what happens when that nice, clear path kinda ends? Well, today, the journey from teenager to adult is way less straightforward. In fact, it's so different that psychologists have identified a whole new stage to describe this modern reality.
I'd like you to meet emerging adulthood. This term, coined by psychologist Jeffrey Arnott, describes the period from your late teens all the way through your 20s. It's a time defined by exploration, figuring out who you are, what you want from your career, your relationships, your life, all without having the full responsibilities of traditional adulthood just yet. And we've got the data to prove it. I mean, just look at this. Take the average age of marriage for women. Right after World War II, it was around 21. By the year 2000, it had jumped all the way to 27. It's clear people are taking a lot longer to settle into these traditional adult roles.
And this isn't just happening in one place. We see this pattern all over. In Thailand, for instance, you can see a really clear drop in marriage rates from the mid-90s to more recent years. This delay is a classic hallmark of emerging adulthood. So, this brings up a really fascinating question. All this extra time for exploration, this delay in settling down, is this a good thing? Maybe allowing for better life choices? Or is it a bad thing, creating instability and just a prolonged adolescence? Well, the research suggests it's a little bit of both. Now, this whole period of exploration, it eventually flows into the next big phase, young adulthood.
This typically spans your 20s and early 30s, and this is the stage where, in so many ways, you are at the absolute peak of your powers.
Physically, I mean, it really doesn't get much better than this. As a young adult, you're experiencing your maximum strength. Your senses are at their sharpest, your reaction times are the quickest, and your cardiovascular system is in prime condition.
And the way you think, it changes dramatically too. You're leaving behind that absolute black and white logic of childhood. A young adult's thinking becomes what we call relativistic, recognizing that the world is full of gray areas and different perspectives. It also gets way more pragmatic, focusing on finding realistic solutions to the complex problems of, real life.
But hold on, is being an adult just about turning a certain age or hitting your physical peak? Well, if you ask young people themselves, the answer is way more about what's happening on the inside.
For most young people, that real feeling of being an adult, it comes from these big internal shifts, taking full responsibility for yourself, making your own decisions, becoming financially independent. And it's so important to remember this can vary by culture. In many Asian cultures, for example, a key marker is being able to financially support your parents.
The famous psychologist Erik Erikson, he really keyed in on this. He saw this period as being defined by one central challenge: intimacy versus isolation. His big idea was that our main task as young adults is to form deep, meaningful connections with others. If we succeed, we feel this amazing sense of belonging. But if we don't, we can face a really powerful sense of isolation.
So we'll end with a question for you. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a mentor, understanding this journey is absolutely key. Are the young people in your life in that exploratory, emerging adult phase, or are they in the young adult phase of building and peaking? Because knowing the difference, well, that can change everything about how you guide and support them on their own unique path.